Black Gemara. We are up to the Men Gimel Amar Aleph, about 20 lines from the top of the page. We're discussing a Chetzia Shivcha Chetzia Mechaydin, and we're talking constantly about his status. And while they're waiting for get Shich and all that, is he still considered, proper Evid, or technically he's just waiting for his get? So we have an interesting question, and that is that a Chetzia Shivcha Chetzia Evid Chetzia Mechaydin cannot marry a Yiddish woman, a bas chayrim, because half of him is an Eved. Comes out that an Eved is living with a Yiddish woman, which is forbidden. Nor can he marry a shivcha because he's ben chayrim. A chayrim can't live with a shivcha. That's what we look at Mishnah, the Mishnah Achrona, that we've compelled the master to set him free. See, Bailu, we have an interesting question. Mi shechetzia Eved v'chetzia mechayrim. Somebody's half and half. Shekiddush bas chayrim. He didn't listen to us. He went ahead and he gave kiddushin. Do we say mahu? What would the din be then? Do we say that there's at least the chayrim part of him is engaged to this woman, and therefore you need a get and all that, and he's an H. So do we say that nothing happened? Because that's the question. Now, in Gemara Kedushin of Zayin Amar Aleph, we're going to have a whole interesting shiloh, a discussion with Rabbi and Abaya. If a person, and this is what the Gemara concludes, if a person says to a woman, "You are engaged to half of me," it's all right. To Chetzia. Why? Because what he's really saying, what he means to say is that you're engaged to half of me, that the other half of me is going to marry another woman. In other words, he's saying, I'm going to marry another wife. I want you to know from the outset. You get a permission. I'm telling you from the outset that you only have half of me because I'm marrying another wife. No problem. But if he says to a woman, half of you is Mekudesh to me, so what's he saying? That you can marry another man because the other half of you will be tight. That's impossible. So that's no good. So now we want to know, here in this case, it's a half a man, right? Half of me is going to be Mekudesh to this Bas Chayri. Do we compare it to the case of a person saying half of me is Mekudesh to the woman, which we said before is a valid condition? Or do we say compare it to a case of half of you to the woman, half of you is engaged to me, which is not Mekudesh? How do we compare this half ever have been played? On the one hand, we compare the man, he's a man. On the other hand, his status is like a woman, la la mish. But that's so. This is how the Gemara delineates it, or maybe it's still different from each case. What's it then? If you're going to say, which is actually the conclusion of the Gemara conclusion there. But then you saw some about if a man says to a woman, he's that you should be engaged to half of me. Mikudeshes. Yeah, so therefore you say the same thing over here. Half of the person has been chayrin, should be gedeshes. I can say there's a difference. The difference is as follows: over there, you could be engaged to the total person. If he wanted to, you can say, all of me mekudesh to me. Here, it's not suitable completely, right? Because you can't marry more than half of Ben Chayrin. The Eved part can never be involved in the marriage. So because you're limited in the captive, maybe it doesn't work. In other words, over there, the entire person agrees that half of them should be Mekudesh. This is along the lines of the Sister Chaysh explained earlier. Like all along the half, but regarding the in the case of the Eved, the other half has no day here. The Eved part has no day here. So therefore, it's different than maybe over here it's not Mekudesh, or even it's limited. Over there we said half a woman, she's not Mekudesh. You know why? The Shai B'Kinyan could have married all of her, and you left part of it behind. So therefore, the Kinyan has no legs. But her Eved l'Shai B'Kinyan, here you left nothing behind. Whatever you were able to do, you did. What do you say over here? How would you learn this case over here? That Toshma coming here. We learned in the Braise, if you killed Misha Chetzia, Eved, we learned yesterday, if somebody killed half an Eved, and have some, a Chetzia, and we had a discussion yesterday, you pay the knas of 30, who do you pay to? Do you pay to this half and half? We don't look at, we look at Monday and Tuesday and all that. I believe it's because Kali Khan, he dies completely, so they both get compensated. So now the question is very simple. It says that half the knas you give to the master, and half the knas you give it to the heirs. Now, koifet is a kufra kapara. This is a like we don't say blood money, but this is sort of compensation for the loss of life. The problem is, if a chetzi ever chetzi can't get married, how does he have children? Or mili yoshev? The amri kedusha la kedusha. If you tell me that, sorry, as an eved, he has no children at all.
But before he sold himself into slavery, he might have had fellas.
An Eved Kanani. Someone Eved Kanani here. An Eved Kanani, if any children he has while he's an Eved, are not his. It belongs to the other, to the master, exactly. So he must have had children after he was in the status of Chatzi Ever. But how can he have children? In other words, even if he has children, the Gemara right now thinks they're not his. Now, Taisa, that's an interesting question. What do you mean they're not his? We know you're not allowed to marry. There's all kinds of Vedas. You're not allowed to marry. You're not allowed to have a mamzer. But if you did, the mamzer is your child, and the mamzer will yashin you. What's this? Okay, the guy married. He shouldn't have married. What's the most question? The person says no. In the case of a mamzer and all those people, the people themselves, the parents, can marry. The concept of kedushin exists, not for this particular woman, but for another woman. So because the concept of kedushin exists, therefore the children are rightfully his. If he's not going to get married, the whole concept of marriage doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then the legal status of children are not his. It doesn't work. Children come with kedushin. So even though in this particular case maybe kedushin not typhus, but the concept of kedushin is there, marriage is there. So therefore, but a can't marry anybody. So therefore, the whole concept of kedushin is not there. The Gemara thinks right now there's no yoshim either. The Gemara, so yoshim, you know, how does he have children? How does he have heirs? Who said he dies? That's Teshuvah explaining the Gemara's question.
Then according to that, sense it's not false.
So yes,
Exactly. So how does he have children? So his children legally are not his. That's what he's saying here. He might have children, but halachically they're not his. Why are you giving the kaifa to them? Exactly, they're not yoshim. So Balaam said, "Who said he died? Do you think died means died literally? Died means he became a treifa. We know treifa ain't a chaya, and that's what it means. So if it's, but the question still remains. So where the yoshim? Well, my yoshim nafshe himself, we're calling himself his own yodish. I'm not comfortable with it. What do you mean yoshim is himself? Where do you find that you label the person himself as his own yodish? We're calling it kaifer, compensation. Has to physically die. So how does he have yoshim? Elam Rabba. The din is you have to give the word is not that you give half to the yoshim, because there are no yoshim. So what's the point of even saying it? So first you explain. Actually, first say something else. But the pshat is when we say 50% to the yoshim, not because the yoshim are getting it, we're trying to say, but not to the master, because you owe $30. So when we say $15 to the master, what happens to the other? What happens to the rest? So we're saying the rest does not go to the master. In theory, it goes to yoshim. There are no yoshim, but does not go to the master. That's the main point here. Now we have a big machlekes regarding chetzi shivcha. What about the maid? Half maid and half ben chayrin. I remember the Torah talks about over there. We have a machlekes b'shmol b'kiva when it says that if a man, she's married to an evedivity and a man has an adulterous affair with her, so we say that she wasn't totally redeemed. He didn't give her yet a star shikhr, and then says la yumsu because she's not really free. Who are we talking about over here? So one opinion, Akiva holds, we're talking about a chetzi shivcha chetzi b'schayrin, and that's why you bring a guilt offering and malka, but there's no death because it's not really a marriage. And according to Bishma, we're not talking about chetzi shivcha chetzi, we're talking about she's a shivcha charupa, she's a total shivcha. But still, if she lives with an evidivity, even though they're not really married, that's why there's no missa, but there's something going on over here because the master has a right for a shivcha to marry an evidivity. The evidivity already had his wife of his own, and therefore. There's the laws of a guilt offering. Now, so the question is, what happens? Do we say the same thing that there's no kedushin at all? Now, do we say the bas chayrin also does not get engaged? She got engaged to a ben chayrin. What happens? So Amar Rava, kishem shemakadosh chatzi isha enu kedushes. Just like if you marry half a woman now kedushes, kachetz shichet b'chayrin is kacha ein kedusha kedushin. Here, with a woman, the kedushin is not kedushin. Half of a woman can be mekudesh. That's what the Rava says. Dorish Rabba Barabuna agreed with Rabba. Kishem Shamakad is Chatzi Isha any Kadeshes, Kachet Shivcha Zuchain and Kudish Kacha Kadeshes. A half woman can be Kudish, a Shivcha and a Bas Chayrin, you're only getting half of her engaged, so therefore it's not a Kudish. Came along to Rab Chizda, me dummy. What are you comparing the case of Kedusha of a half a woman to a Chetzi Shivcha Zuchain? As we said more before. Hasam Shai Bekinyani, you could have gotten the entire woman engaged, you only got half the woman engaged, therefore there's no Kedusha at all. You did whatever you could. So the entire woman that's shy to get married, the bas chayrin now is engaged. So why should it not be effective? You can't compare the two. So in fact, Hadar Oikim Rabba Baravuna Amoyro Rabba then stood up. His interpreter, the person that his voice that normally carries over his messages, said the following: "V'dara Shidashin," and this is a very interesting piece. And that is, it says in the Pasuk, and this stumbling block is under your hand. So we learn from here, he says, Ein Adam Oimid. This is talking about the time that people won't have any leaders, don't have anything. Ein Oimid al Divrei Torah. A person is not really proficient in any area of halacha. El imkein nichshel behen. You had to make a mistake, and you're humiliated for the mistake that you made. So you learn a lesson that you have to do your homework properly. And as we say, that even if you know the halacha, you should look at it again just to double check. You should take it seriously. Even though nobody's changing his mind from the day before, even though is over there, we say I disagree with Rabbi. I agree with Rav Chizda that she is Mekudesh. Why? My time of Hasam Shaya Bekinyani Hachaloi Shaya Bekinyani. You left nothing behind. Comes along the argument. Amar Rav Shesha says, I agree with Rabbi. If you get a half a one, I'm a Kudish, if a person like whispers in the ear and he says he asks you a question, it says who is considered a shifcha charufa? That pasuk I just told you about, that she was a charufa nechrepes leish to an evidibri, and then somebody she has an adulterous affair. Because she gets malchus, or gets guilt offering, they're not really married, but partially. Keep his opinion that what? That she's engaged in everybody. Alma basa srusi. Clearly, maybe we see that she gets.
Can be us.
Yeah, she can be engaged. She is engaged. Yeah, engaged because says mureses. Amar loi, tell them klachet to Rabbi Shmuel. Why don't you follow Rabbi Shmuel's opinion? And he says, we're not talking about the chetz shivchet v'chayron. He said, dibra toida koloshim and adam. We have the line of dust. It doesn't mean partially redeemed and partially not redeemed. This is how people speak. Not redeemed. Redeemed, not redeemed. In other words, totally not redeemed. Talking about a normal shivchet kananis. Klachet will follow Rabbi Shmuel's path. We're talking about shivchet kanani that's engaged in everything. Now, let me ask a question. Follow Rabbi Shmuel. We use the word nobody will argue that a shifcha kananis can be technically engaged to an evidibri, halachically engaged, and yet we use the word moreses. So what does moreses mean according to Rabbi Shmuel? Can get engaged. Even though we use the word moreses, it's a euphemism. We mean that they're set aside for each other, but nothing more than that. So even according to Rabbi Kiva, we can say that even though we use the word moreses, it doesn't mean that she's engaged halachically. It means that they're meant they're set aside for each other.
Someone suggesting we should.
Yeah, so we have, well, no, they live together, husband and wife, but they're not husband and wife. So we have here two opinions. So Rabba and Rav Chizda say one way, and Rav Shesha and Rabba say that they're not engaged. Rabba and Rav Chizda say they are. In halacha, we find a very interesting thing. That when it comes to chetzi, we say they're not engaged. He's not engaged. When it comes to chetzi shivcha, we paskin that she is engaged, and everybody's wondering what's the difference. So the Tzeitzachation in the Seir HaMilim, so the beautiful thing. We sort of mentioned it when we looked at the Durham Raflama, that is, the role of a man plays in a Kedushin and a woman are very different. To paraphrase the Ran doesn't say that we're paraphrasing him. Why, by the chuppah, when you say Harap Yishali, why doesn't the woman say, I am asking him, yes? She just says nothing. Why not say yes? Isn't yes stronger? So the Ran says, the role of a woman in a Kedusha is very different than a man. The Torah says, Ki yikach ish isha. He has to do 100% of everything. Therefore, he's the taker. She has to submit herself. She has to, therefore, have no input at all. She just is a vatal her ruts into the chassan and accepts whatever he does. But the moment she says yes, she's participating. She says that's exactly. And there's no longer ki yikach ish isha. So therefore, in the case of the woman here, she has to do nothing. So the chetzi shivcha part, the chetzi bas got engaged. The chetzi eved doesn't have to contribute anything to it; just has to be quiet. Does nothing. So that's why they're mekudesh. But when it comes to the man's part of it, we need that the kiyikach, every part of the man should be involved. Half of him is an eved, and the eved is involved in taking. Eved can't marry; it can't be taking a bas chayim. That's over there. It doesn't. That's how the Tzos expresses it. I'll tell you about my father. We say by a kedushin, how they at mekadesh is we. He said two words are the same idea. At is aleph and taf. Beginning of aleph and the last letter aleph. Li lamed is the longest, the tallest letter we have, and yud is the shortest letter. So what we're saying here is at every part of you from aleph to taf, and li every part of me from the top of my head to the bottom of my toe are engaged to each other. It's not like chetzi here. Another word he said the same idea. Two people come together, they are so strange to each other. There's like an aleph to a taf. They're so distant from each other, or like a lamed to a yud. How does it work? If Kedas Moshe Yisrael, if you follow Torah and mitzvahs, then it makes it work. Okay, let's continue. Chizah says, an interesting thing. If have a shivcha get engaged to Ruben, then she half, right? And remember, Rav Chizah learned that that they are engaged. At least a half past chayim. And then she was set free. Now all of her is a full-fledged Yid. Then the chazan is katchel Shimon. She walked. Reuben is still alive. She walked away. She was married to Reuben while she was a chatzi. Then she walked away and she married Shimon as a full-fledged Yid, and the two brothers. And we're learning in Maria Yavamas that if she had a connection to two brothers, she does not marry the third one. Aisha's mess relation Mason. And then both of them died. Reuben and Shimon. Shneim misyavem es alevi. Sorry, but they both died. Misyavem es alevi. She still does marry Levi, the third brother. She had no children from either one. I won't say that she was married to both of them because Manoshech.
Wasn't she a nation ish?
One second. If we're going to say that a Chetz is engaged, then Kedushin without Kedushin. When Shimon gave her Kedushin, what was it? Nothing. She was not married to Shimon. And if Kedushin Shimon Kedushin, we can tell me no that she was married to Shimon, then Kedushin without Kedushin. That means you hold while she was a Shimon because nothing happened. Now that's how Rashi learns, and Taisus finds it very problematic because Chizah just ruled that a Chetz is engaged. So what's the suffix that he has of it? Definitely she was engaged to Reuben. So Taisha says the suffix is a suffix which we'll learn about in the Gemara in a minute from now, and all the Rishonim agree with Rashi. Many because we didn't learn this the next piece. How can the Gemara already have a suffix and counting on the next Chakira, which is an interesting Chakira? We'll see in a minute. What exactly is the Chakira of Chizah? We'll see. According to Taisha, at least. Eat mobilant. But they weren't brothers. She was engaged to Reuben, then she got set free. She married Shimon. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. The question is, when she's a chetzish and now she becomes a full bas chayim, what happens? Is she a new person, or does it just say that now there was a stumbling block preventing the half of bas chayim spreading to the rest of her? But the moment you remove the avdus, that half of bas chayim takes over the entire woman. So there's nothing new. It just continued. Like we have a concept in Merklushin, that same word of Zayin and Aleph. It's v'nifshe the kedusha b'kula. We let the hegdish spread throughout the entire thing. The only reason why two animals it doesn't spread is because Das Acheres Makebes, the other partner, didn't want to make it hegdish. But the idea here is, which one is it? Is it a new person? Then her kedusha, the second person is a valid kedusha. It's not the same person who was married to Reuben. If whatever is married to Reuben now extended, then she's fully married to Reuben. So the Gemara says here as follows. Rabbi Yosef says, she's no longer married to Reuben because there's a new person. Rashi's expression, like a brand new person. It's the same lashon we use by a girl, like a brand new person. And all that happens is that whatever happened before continues. It makes sense more like me. Interesting. Rav Zayda said it the name of Achman. Now he's taking credit of his opinion. See, it says, this is a verse, another thing my father used to say. Everyone touches Ezel Chacham, Halom Mikolad. Ezel Chacham question mark, Halom Mikolad. My father said in Piggy Up, there's no question marks, commas or anything. Why don't you put the question mark at the end? Ezel Chacham, you think a Chacham is Halom Mikolad, and just parrots for other people to say? No. Chacham, somebody who, even if he hears from somebody else, he understands it and takes ownership, makes it his own. Right? Rav Zayda came along and took the Nachman's word, and now it's Kavas in the deep. It's my word. And because he's expanding on it. And he said, yes, it says the pasuk by the they don't die, she wasn't set free. But since she would have been set free, then she's completely married to that evidivity, and you must, the person would die. even though there's no other condition afterwards. So we see clearly that the condition, the moment you remove the stumbling block, the obstacle, it spreads throughout the rest of the evidivity. Abaye said, the tons of it, Rabbi Shmuel. According to tons, Abaye said to him, let me ask a question. If you follow Rabbi Shmuel, again the same Shmuel we had before, the Amma b'shivcha Canaan zameres eleven ibrei. Talking about the shivcha Canaan is hochin nam b'dechichupaso. Let's say the shivcha Canaan is now is set free. You must will die as if she's married to Ebed Ibri. She never had kedushin at all. When she was a full-fledged shivcha charufa and living with the Ebed Ibri, there was zero kedushin. And if she's set free, we don't automatically she's engaged to the or married to the Ebed Ibri. Why? She has to do a pula. Ella my Yisrael may follow Shmuel. Why, if she was set free, will a person die? It means shechupasa v'chazav and iskacha. Obviously, she had to remarry that Ebed Ibri. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, we can say shechupasa v'chazav and iskacha. Not that it automatically spreads. It means that halachically it's a new person, but she now got married. Just like a big machlekes when a 12-year-old, who can be the mind. Her mother married her up to this person, and at the age of 12 she could walk out. What happened at 12 years old? So the kedushin happened before, just now becomes halachically real kedushin, or she has to do it again. The next bia is what makes them marry. Same thing here.
She became a new person.
She's an adult now. Yeah. So the same thing here. Is it spreading what was there before, or it's a brand new idea? Oh, but Abuda Baktina said. So what's interesting here is that chetzi shivcha, half of you was already a yid, and half of you was not. And the word is that not that half of you is a yid, half of you is a goy. Then what do you mean? Every part of you has a goyishkeit in it. Like shutfin, is it half and half, or is it the whole of the half? Is it the whole of the half or half of the whole? It's in every part of you is a goy, and therefore since the goy part, it's the whole person in you first. And they made her set her free. Now we learned before, why do we say the Ebed free? Because of Puravu. And we know a woman does not have the mitzvah Puravu, only the man has the mitzvah. Is Kaman, who does a follow, Rabbi Yechim and Bruka, must be followed Rabbi Yechim Bruka. We had in the Gemara, Rabbi Yechim Bruka says that they both have the mitzvah of Puravu. So therefore, it's both. Meaning Hefkin Nakuba. It was they took advantage of her because she couldn't marry anybody. So that's why it was a tikkun olam. Next Mishnah, we learned that if you sell your eved to a goy, we penalize you because you denied him all these mitzvahs that he would be able to do, and you have to set him free, and you have to redeem him, and you're not allowed to buy him back and take him back as an eved. Once you redeem him, you must set him free. So again, he's denied some of the mitzvahs that are available to him. And he goes free. So the Gemara, later on the Gemara tomorrow we'll learn, who do we penalize, the buyer or the seller? Who's worse, the ganef or the one who fences the stolen goods? Interesting question. Thinking about it further. Yes, that's the Gemara. Yeah, exactly. Rashi is learning us. That's the Gemara. Tell me, learned. If somebody sells his evet to a goy, this is what the Brisa says. You sell your evet to a goy, he goes free. The tzaddik gets shikha merabbi edition, and he needs a get. The rabbi edition has to set him free, and he has to give him a get shikha. When do we say you need a separate that the redemption is not enough? When do we say you need a separate get? You did not write an oinoy. See what that is? If you wrote an oinoy, then that in itself is his bill of divorce. My oinoy. No. What's oinoy? I would say the kosel hachi likishativrach mimenu in the sale. When he sold to the guy, he wrote in the contract: if he runs away from you, ainly asek. If you run away from him, ainly asek bach. I have no more involvement with you. That in itself is like a get shikhr. That's what he read. Then you don't need a separate. You don't need a separate get. Love the olav min ha'eved. You borrowed money from a guy, and as collateral, you gave him security. You gave him this eved. So right now, the eved does not belong to the guy yet; it's still by you. But he already has the guy can collect from this eved, which means that if he does, you
get the eved to do work for him.
No, if let's say you owe him $100, if you don't pay me by a certain time, I'm taking that. The eved becomes mine. So the eved. You might have a shaykhs to go already. The question is, but what happens? We'll see tomorrow. Well, right now, what happens to this eved? Do you have to set him free? As if you sold to a guy already, we have to already set him
During
free.
that time that the evidence is the mashman, who's responsible to feed him and clothe him.
The original Balbos, the Yid, but the guy already has ties to it. The moment the guy made him in the Musay, then it's as if it's a guy. Now, what the Musay most in a minute? Then he goes free. You have to redeem and so on. My name Musay. What is this? The Musay? In those days, they used to put like a collar necklace around the Eved, saying that I belong to this and this person. So that's what it is. They put or just some kind of an emblem or something that he's that he belongs to the guy. The moment the guy puts his claws on the Eved, you have to set him free. It doesn't make sense. Nashke cannot mean that, because we find the same word nashke regarding a field. What do you put an emblem or a necklace around the field? But we learned arisin and others. Somebody is a sharecropper, which means you get a percentage of the profit, 25, third, half. The hachakidis, with there you get a fixed amount. You also work in somebody else's field by a guy, but you get a fixed amount of fruit produce, regardless of how successful or unsuccessful the crop was that year. The arise batayavis, or if you that this is arisa that you have is ready from generation to generation. Your father was an oris in this guy's field, and your zayda was an oris there. Or a goy that gave his field as a mashke. He borrowed money from the Yid and he gave him his field in Etzisrael as a mashke. Now we know a goy is kind of, we had before the opinion, a goy is kind of is potter from giving meiser because he's kind of the land in Etzisrael, but he gave it to the Yid as a mashke. Does the Yid have to give meiser or not? Do we already consider the Yids? Should mashke say so? Even though he did, and here it says Nimusai, is plural and Maisa. It's not the Yids, and therefore still the guy you put the Maisa. But we use the word Nimusai. Now the Isak that Nashki from Musa means what? You put a necklace, so the Bas Nashki is a field considered a necklace. Allah says, I'll tell you how we reconcile two brises. In one of them we say that as soon as you gave it as a mashkin to the guy, that's it. It's the guy's already, he must have debit free. And by a field we say, nope, that's still considered the guy's owner, not we don't consider the Yids yet. Otherwise, he'd be chayiv and ma'aser. What's going on here? Gemara says, "Oh no, you know what Musa means? It's a man, a date, and for some reason or other, by an eved, it's considered as if you sold it already, and by a field, it's not. And we want to know why. Is kasha is man as man, like kasha, eved to soda, like kasha. Oh, the matazimne. This case of eved is talking about the due date came and the guy, and the Yid did not pay back, so now the guy has the right to collect from the. He has the right to collect from this Eved. And therefore, Rashi goes a bit further. That means already now, before the due date, the Goy already has the right to use the Eved to help him out on certain things. And therefore, because you belittled the Takazar Chamim by making the Eved a mashkin in the first place, even though the due date hasn't arrived yet, so therefore we say, you know what, we're going to penalize you already. The very fact that the idea that you put it in there, that there's a possibility, and you flaunt the Kanzar Chamim, that you shouldn't sell never the guy, we penalize you. However, when it comes to the field, if you buy a field, let's say that you may set a time for whatever it is that the master can be paid up, the fact is the time hasn't arrived yet, so therefore it's the guy's field. The Yid has no right to go in and eat the produce, the crop from that field yet. And then furthermore, even if the time came, since I did not say you get the field, I said that you, as we'll see in the Gemara, that you're going to get. Okay, we'll see next time in the Gemara. So that's what it is. Here came the time. Here the time come. By you will say Pashut. By never sorry. I was explaining the next answer. Simply, by never the time arrived and he didn't pay, it goes to the guy. The field of time has not arrived yet. It's still by the original owner. We have to be in this case the guy. Says the Gemara. What do you? I don't understand. Elagabi Ebed, you tell me the whole thing of Ebed, talking about Motazim and the guy therefore took the Ebed as his mashkin, as payment. No, so what's the chiddush? But obviously it belongs to the guy now, so we have to penalize you. We're talking about the time hasn't come, and yet there's a difference in Ebed and Sadi. But like Kasha, Legufa, by the case of the Ebed, you're giving over the Ebed to the Balabas, and therefore the fact that you mazals on the Kanzah Chamim, and even before that, the Ebed has a right, the Balabas already has a right. The guy has a right sort of to use Eved. Mashenke, when it comes to the payda, all you gave was the payda. He said, if the time comes, doesn't pay yet, you can go in the field and take the fruits. And not the, exactly. So therefore, even if the time came by a field, it never really becomes the Yid. It just has a right to eat the fruits until he gets paid out. Or another answer is b'shalova manas l'mashkene l'mashkene. Or it's talking about that if he came to buy the guy, he gave us a time. If you don't pay by this and this time, I'm taking the field. But he never took the field, and he never took the he never collected, and because he never collected, therefore the field still goes to the guy. And if he happens to eat some of the fruits, the part of it's a guy's field. Mashen gained by the Ebed, even if he didn't collect it yet, the very fact that now the ownership transfers to the guy, and you mazalza the kazachamim, therefore we say that you penalize you and you have to pay out and redeem him. Stop it. Sorry.